Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. And today guys, I want to go through a quick list review of a competitive Scions list that I've been having some very good success with. And I thought, you know what, I'll go through and explain why I've picked which units, what they do on the battlefield, and hopefully this list will be of help to some other Guard players out there. So without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. So first thing to say is I run the entire list as Lambden Lions. Now the reason I do this is because I want to keep things as streamlined as possible. Remember, this is a tournament list. I have had practice with running multiple regiments, or when I ran my Genestealer cult, multiple cult creeds and list. And to be honest, you end up spending a lot of time both trying to remember which units in which detachment and gets which buffs and whatnot. Of course you can colour coordinate it, that's not a problem, but also at the same time I tend to find you spend a lot of time explaining to your opponent, right, well this unit's part of this detachment and so on and so forth when you're actually playing the game. So I have found that for speed, and remember chess clocks are a really big part of competitive 40k now, so I have found in terms of speed, efficiency and ease to play, which is also a very important part of any competitive list, how easy it is to actually play it in a sort of high stress or higher stress environment. I found sticking to one regiment is fine, and to be fair, Lambden Lions bring everything that you need. You can probably squeeze out a little bit more efficiency, but I would probably argue it's a bit of a case of diminishing returns in that case. Anyway, so everything's Lambden Lions, apart from the Bulgarins are an auxiliary choice, so they don't get a trait, and the two flyers don't get a trait as well because they are part of the Aeronautica Imperialis, they're the Navy. So that's the list and the traits and everything. Now in terms of relics, I go for 2 relics in this list. I have the one from the main codex, which is the Autoreliquary of Tiberius, which allows me to get an extra order, and I put that on one of my Tempestor primes. And I also go for the Lambden Lions Refractor Shield Generator, which I put on another one of my Tempestor primes, and that gives me a 5+ invulnerable safe bubble for from the officer. Now another thing, warlord trait, I go for 1 warlord trait from the main book and I put that on my Lord Commissar, and I go for Master of Command because I want to get as many orders into this list as possible. I then use a command point before the beginning of the game for Progeny of Conflict, which allows me to get another warlord trait, and I spend that on the Lambden Lions warlord trait Keys to the Armoury. And I tend to actually put that warlord trait on the same character who I give the relic to, and the Keys to the Armoury gives me a bubble of reroll 1s. So from that one character, that one Tempestor Prime, I've got reroll 1s to hit from my warlord trait, and I've got a 5+ invulnerable save from my relic, and you'll see how that all comes into play with the list. So that's the pre-game sort of warlord traits and relics. The last thing to mention is I do spend 2 CP on giving each one of these flyers advanced countermeasures, so even when they're hovering, they still keep the -1. I have found that to be a very good tactical choice. And last but not least, in terms of pre-game CP, I go for I take an Inquisitor and I make him a Psyker, and I give him the spend the CP so that he can also take a warlord trait, the Inquisitorial one, and I go for the Ordo Malleus warlord trait, which allows him to cast 2 psychic powers and deny 2 psychic powers a turn. Now when you add all that up, considering I'm taking 2 battalions, I'm actually starting this game with 4 command points, because I start with 9, and then I spend 1 for an extra relic, 2 for extra warlord traits, puts me down to 6, and then I spend 1 on each one of these Valkyries, which puts me down to 4. So even though I'm only starting with 4 command points, I've had no issues with command points in the last 4 games that I've won. Bear in mind, I've won all 4 of the games with this Scion list. I'm sure there are improvements, and in fact I'd be very much open to improvements. Please let me know down in the comment section how you think I can make this Scions list better. So that's all the pre-game stuff. Let's actually get into what's in this list. So in the first detachment we have a real solid core. In the first battalion we have 6 squads of Scions. Now as you can see here, I'm just using my regular guardsmen to represent this. That's because I've been trying this Scion list out. And I haven't yet bought the models for it, but let me tell you, based on the results that I've had with this list, I will very much be going out and making sure that I've got all the models for my Scions, because I think it's going to become my go-to tournament faction. But I've used my regular guard model because that's what I've been practicing with, and that's what gives a good representation of what I'm taking in this army. So the first thing is, in the 1st Battalion, I take 6 squads of regular Tempestor Scions, and I take 2 plasma guns in each squad and a plasma pistol on the sergeant. I then take 2 Tempestor Primes, and each one of those gets a command rod and a chainsword. I then put all of these squads in these Taurox Primes, and that makes up my motorized element of the list and the real ground pounders, and what I would describe as my foot core of the list. You see, what I do is I put all of these squads in these transports, and then I use my Tempestor Prime, who has the Warlord trait for reroll 1s, keys to the Armoury, and my Refractor Shield Relic, and I put him with those Tauroxes, which means those Tauroxes are rerolling 1s. Normally they have no way of being able to do that, and they also get to have a 5+ invulnerable save, which is really, really good. One of the things that a lot of people say guard armor really needs is some kind of invulnerable save, and in this age of melter that we find ourselves, having a 5+ invulnerable save is absolutely fantastic. I cannot tell you how many times I have stopped a big old melter wound going through on my Tauroxes because I had a 5+ invuln. It's really, really good. So that's my that's my first sort of castle, and what I do with that is I start off, tend to be very close to each other. I tend to hide them out of line of sight because I've got a 14-inch move with those Tauroxes. It's a good move, and turn 1, if I go second, I'll just keep them out of line of sight and I'll protect them with the bubble shield. And if I get to first turn on turn 1, then I will just rush forward and just Gatling things to death, because I have a 38-inch threat range with these vehicles, 14-inch movement, 24-inch range, Gatling guns, and volley guns. So all at AP -1 on the Gatling and AP -3 on the volley, because, you know, I am Lambden Lions. And I will move and advance and move that guy so that he can keep up with those vehicles and, you know, not be shot thanks to Lookout. So he's got 3 vehicles protecting him. It's going to be very difficult for my opponent to take that character out. Now, and the damage they can do turn 1, well, the damage his army can do turn 1 is significant. The guys inside, I'll tend to keep inside until turn 2 and turn 3. I normally get 4 squads out turn 2, and then the other 2 squads out turn 3, and that allows me to have a counter punch. So inevitably, these Tauroxes are going to start dying, but the contents inside should be fine. And I tend to try and keep the terrain heavy balls. I tend to try and keep them near terrain so that when the guys die, when the Tauroxes die, the guys can get out into cover. And basically, turn 2 and turn 3, I use my plasma to counter attack the enemy's, you know, first and second waves that will be coming in at me. So that's the first sort of part of the list. Let's go on to the second part of the list. Second part of the list is my Flyboys. Now, what I do here is I have another 4 squads of Scions. This is in the 2nd Detachment, now 2nd Battalion. Another 4 squads of Scions. Each one of these with a plasma pistol and a chainsword sergeant, and then 2 melter guns in each squad. Now you might be saying, Morning Glory, why aren't you taking command squads? I actually find command squads to be a little expensive. I find regular Scions now with the 2 special weapons and the free plasma pistol on the sergeant, that's enough special weapons for me. Genuinely, it is. And it allows me to save a few points here and there, because if I was to take a command squad instead of one of these squads, I would take, it would cost me 80 points for 4 melter guns, whereas one of these squads only costs me 65 points. And it also, because nearly all my Scions are starting in vehicles, what that means is that if, you know, inevitably when these vehicles die and people have got to start piling out, and, you know, I've got to start rolling 1, see if anyone dies in getting out from the vehicle, I've got a couple of las rifle people in each team, which gives me plenty of redundancy. I have jumped 10 guys out and rolled 4 1s, you know, and that's in this list it's not been a problem because it's just been 4 riflemen. So that's what I find. It saves points. I find it to be a little bit more flexible and gives me a little bit of a protection against people dying getting out of vehicles. Now, these guys go in the 2 Valkyries with 2 squads in each, and in one of the Valkyries I will put the Inquisitor and the Lord Commissar, and the other Valkyrie I will put the Tempestor Prime. Now, and this Tempestor Prime is the one that has the Autoreliquary of Tiberius. Now, I use these guys pretty much the same way each time. I will use them to get engaged on all fronts by the flyers flying around, and I will use them as a turn 1 punch. These guys are my, well, suicide melters for lack of a better term. They fly forward, and thanks to the Valkyrie grav shoot rule, they can jump out and they can still meld to the enemy. And thanks to, I tend to use on one of the Valkyries precision drop, which allows me to jump out 5 inches away from the enemy, and even if I've gone over 20 inches movement, it's not a problem, I won't break my legs. But I can only do that on one of the Valkyries, which is again why when I'm jumping out, I have a couple of riflemen in each team, because inevitably if I do grav shoot with the other Valkyrie that hasn't got precision drop on it, I'm probably going to lose a couple of guys, so it gives me that redundancy, no risk of losing any special weapons there. Now, I run these in two ways. If there's one big enemy unit or an enemy castle that really needs damaging turn 1, I'll fly them both together straight down into the jaws of death, jump all four squads out and give the enemy a real taste of melter. And I'll get my 3 characters out, and between his ability to potentially roll 3 orders and his ability to do 1 order thanks to Master of Command, I can order every single one of these squads. Or what I can do is I feel like, okay, the enemy's screened me out, I'm not going to be able to do as much, I want to do some melt but keep some back. I'll send 1 squad off, he'll jump out and do orders on 2 of them, and he'll hang back, this Commissar will hang back, and he'll fly around his Valkyrie, and I might not get these melts out until turn 3 or turn 4 or maybe even turn 5 for a late minute snatch and grab, if I can afford to keep those heavy weapons back. I might jump 1 squad out with the Lord Commissar to do 1 order and just keep 1 squad in there for that late objective gameplay. Now in terms of these 2 Valkyries, they're both armed with multi-laser, multiple rocket pods and heavy bolters, 150 points for a heck of a lot of firepower. If I am facing an enemy shooting army, after I've done my turn 1 rush, if I do the turn 1 rush, I will then go into hover mode. However, if I'm facing an enemy army that's both got good screening and good shooting, what I'll tend to do is actually just drop down to hover mode straight away, because I will keep my AP -1 because I've paid for advanced countermeasures, so it gives me that great tactical flexibility. And then I'll have my gunships in hover mode. They'll be getting +1 to hit because of the roving gunship rule, which means they're hitting on 3s, makes a huge difference. And that way I can add even more firepower. And between these Valkyries and these Taurox Primes, I can tend to clear out the enemy screen very effectively. There's a lot of anti-infantry firepower. And then turn 2 and turn 3, the melter comes out to play, and so does the plasma. So it definitely gives me a lot of tactical flexibility. Or I can run one squad forward, jump out, destroy an enemy anti-tank thing with my melter, keep 1 back. Loads of flexibility and maneuverability in these 2. I used to I've always liked Valkyries. I've seen a lot of people poo-poo them. I wouldn't leave home without them. If you go and watch Tabletop Tactics video where they do a faction focus on Militarm Tempestus, Lawrence the Spider, he runs 3 of these things. I think 3 is a little too much. I would definitely say that 2 is a nice balance, but 3 is not going to be a problem, and 3 would definitely give you even more flexibility. Now, the last thing to mention on this flank is the Inquisitor. I take him because he is a double smite Inquisitor for 60 points. He can do a smite a turn, and because he's auto Malleus, he can do a second targeted smite called Castigation. So he is my psychic guy, and basically he allows me to operate in every phase of the game. He's cheaper than running 2 Premier Psychers, and I tend to find he is really, really effective. It also allows me to have some flexibility on secondaries, because I can play the secondary game if I need to. Overall, just a really good utility character. I used to take an officer of the fleet, I jiggle things around a bit, and now I take this guy. I've never looked back. It's just that good. And especially when you find there's things like Gazgul, and there's Void Dragons, and there's loads of other things that limit the amount of wounds you can do to them per phase. Having a guy that can jump out 60 points and do 3 or 4 mortal wounds to an enemy unit in the psychic phase means that potentially I can destroy one of those annoying only take a certain amount of wounds per phase models. It allows me to do that potentially in 1 turn. So it's really, as Scions and as Guard, to be competitive, we want to try and operate in every single one of the phases. This maneuverability means I operate in the movement phase. This guy allows me to operate in the psychic phase, and these guys allow me to operate in the shooting phase. Last but not least, let's take a look at how I engage in the fight phase and charge phase. Big block of Bullgrins, no mucking about, absolutely fantastic unit. I just find that these are an absolute wall of meat, and they really put my opponent into a tricky position. Either, I've had this go both ways now over the four games that I've played this army. Either my opponent spends his entire first turn destroying the Bullgrins, which is a clever move. Sometimes it'll take a turn and a half and destroy the Bullgrins, but if he does that, he is leaving all this firepower unchecked, and it's absolutely just crushing him. It's doing a huge amount of damage to him. So you can't leave 10 special weapon toting Scion squads unchecked for a turn. They will do serious damage. The other thing is that if my opponent doesn't deal with them, which what happened in my last game, you cannot let 9 Bullgrins get an effective charge off on you. These 9 Bullgrins charged into a 30-man boy unit, and only 2 boys were left standing after they'd finished swinging. Yes, there was the priest giving them the extra attack, that's why I take him, but also they get +1 attack for charging. They also get to do a mortal wound each and a 4+ when they charge if I spend a CP on that. Yeah, absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. So I really like this unit. Again, they allow me to operate in every phase. This is a very much a very balanced, like any perfect blade. It's a very balanced force. It's got shooting, it's got maneuverability, it's got combat, and it's just got a little seasoning of psychic power. Not much more to say about Bullgrins. Big block of meat, big block of damage. Now, last thing to say is, in my 2nd battalion, I have 2 bare bones Scion squads. Of course, I get a free plasma pistol on each one. These units are here very simply for 45 point engage on all fronts helpers and 45 point deploy scrambler helpers. I tend to deploy 1 down turn 2 and get the scramblers somewhere there, and the same turn 3. So it's yeah, they're really good. And also I normally rely on my Valkyries to help me get an engage on all fronts, but they can get picked out of the sky. If that's the case, I've got these 2 squads of mad lads that can come in and help me get that engage on all fronts. With this list, in terms of, it's a good thing to talk about in terms of secondaries, always go for engage on all fronts, always go for deploy scramblers. The third one, I tend to go for a bit of a dealer's choice depending on what I am facing. So in my last game I went for bring it down. I've gone for some of the mission specific ones like direct assault before. So yeah, I leave that third one open, but I always go for engage on all fronts. I've yet to get less than 10 points on it. In my last game I got 12 points on it. And then I think I got 11 points and 10 points in the other games. And then for deploy scramblers, I've never failed to get that as well. I've also never failed to max primary with this list. I've never failed to max primary with this list. Okay, and this list is very good at denying the enemy primary points, because all of these little guys, their objective secured. It makes a huge difference. So there we go. That's the list, guys. That's the tactics. That's how I employ it. Let me know what you think. I've had some great success with it. I'm sure there are ways it can be improved, but I hope this video will be a good sort of base template for those players out there who want to get an idea of how to run their Scions in 9th edition. I will put a link, or I'll put the list down in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider heading on over to the Patreon page. There's a link down in the description below. Massive thank you to all my patrons. I'll be using the Patreon money. I'm really transparent with it. I always use it to sort of do things on the channel, and I'll be using my Patreon money soon to make sure that I get a proper Scion army. This has just been one that I've been using to playtest, and I found it really effective. And you know what? I want to get a proper full Scion army with a proper paint scheme. You can see I've started with these Tauroxes here, but I want to get some more. So hopefully that'll be. Look forward to that. Huge thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys, you're awesome. You are awesome. I always tend to rush to that bit, but you know what? I'm going to take the time. Massive thank you to my Patreon supporters. Genuinely. You know, this battle bunker, all this stuff, all this terrain, it's all thanks to you guys. Anyway, without further ado, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.